The breaking news story today. Former President Jacob Zuma will be on the ballot for you to vote on the 29th of May as the presidential candidate for Umkhonto weSizwe. This follows today's electoral court decision setting aside the IEC's previous decision that he was disqualified from standing. MK had argued in court yesterday that the IEC had no authority to disqualify the former president from contesting the elections as a candidate. It said the matter should be left to Parliament to decide. The IEC had argued that Zuma's conviction and the 15-month sentence without an option of a fine that was handed to him in 2021 meant he did not qualify to be on the ballot for next month's elections. The court disagrees. Zuma is now expected to feature on the candidate list for Umkhonto weSizwe. Joined now by our associate political editor, Avoya Mvoko, and the political analyst, Dr Levy Ndou, joining me from Tswane. Gentlemen, a good evening to you. Dr Ndou, if I may just start with you. Firstly, what does this do to the election? It must give Umkhonto weSizwe some momentum.
Good evening to you, Stephen. Good evening to the viewers at home. Indeed, this gives a lot of moral boost for Umkhonto weSizwe and former President Jacob Zuma. It clears a lot of what would appear to have been confusing and indeed a very frustrating moment for former President Zuma and his party, the MK party. And at the same time, it clears that confusion that was there within the MK party as to whether who then were they going to use if former President Jacob Zuma was removed. So now they know that indeed they are going to use the face of former President Jacob Zuma, and all they need to focus on would be to focus on campaigning and ensure that they win the elections, because that mountain that was there, and I know there was a lot of anxiety that was there, now that it's removed, the focus for MK party and former President Jacob Zuma is to ensure that they focus on the campaigns and indeed win the elections.
Well, Mvoko, I mean, there's so much to this decision, and part of it is that we don't know the basis of it because the full ruling hasn't yet been handed down, only the order. We don't yet have the full judgment, so we don't understand the actual thinking of the electoral court.
Indeed, and that's why a lot of people are moving to the politics and the meaning of this move, precisely because we don't know what the court's reasoning was. But I was reading a tweet earlier from the former president's daughter saying the politics of President Zuma needs to be studied. Suggesting perhaps that clearly we do not know what goes on behind the scenes, or we also don't know what the former president's grand game plan is. Remember, yesterday after the proceedings, once the proceedings inside court were concluded, the former president went to address his supporters outside. And among the things he said was one, which of course was a repeat of something he said earlier, that the boy from Gandla hadn't finished his term and he would want to go back and finish what he started. The second one, which was interesting for me, especially because I hadn't heard him saying that, says, how do you tell someone who started something who then should take bears responsibility for what happens to something that he started? In other words, decoding that, well, from where I said, was that I started the MK party. Now you want to tell me who I should ask or tell, you want to tell me who should lead this party when it goes to Parliament. So I think the eagerness to go to Parliament, I mean, we can speculate about, his reasons, but it was there for all to see.
Dr. Ndou, I mean, there are many other things to this, and one of them is that it must put pressure on the Electoral Commission. It was their decision to uphold the objection that's now been overturned. Is the Electoral Commission now going to face questions about its legitimacy?
Well, it has got its own advantages and disadvantages, in the sense that the Electoral Commission now has to look at the decision that has been taken and therefore choose to abide or not to abide by that decision, or to take it further. But the point is that in a constitutional democracy like we have in South Africa, we are lucky that in a situation where you need clarity, or in a situation where there is conflict and misunderstandings, you always have the courts to adjudicate on our behalf. And my sense is that you need the IEC to be bold enough to come out onto the public and say, we could have erred. And if indeed we have erred, if they agree or believe that they've erred or convinced, they come out to the public and say, we made a mistake and this is the right path. If they feel that they still have sufficient points to further take the matter elsewhere, they could do that. But in the interest of the elections and stability in the country, my view is that let's allow the legal processes to unfold and ensure that whatever is prescribed by the laws, we actually follow suit.
Voya, I mean, would you agree with that? An appeal by the Electoral Commission to the Constitutional Court, and I think they would have the legal option. We're in an unprecedented time, so it's never happened before, as far as I know. But what this would mean then is that the same court that made the decision to jail Zuma in the first place would now have to make a decision about whether to overturn a decision based partially on the fact that he was jailed. Most of the judges who were involved in that decision to sentence him would now be involved in this decision. I can just imagine the mess that would be created here.
Which I doubt the Electoral Commission would want to. It's something that the Electoral Commission would want to do. One, precisely because it wouldn't want to be seen to be the party that wants to, for lack of a better of a better description, be the ones to stop the president from former president from realizing his ambitions. They don't want to be the ones who would have effectively taken that decision, which, by the way, was in essence one of the arguments that the former president's legal team was making yesterday. Remember, they were saying they want to be the player and referee or something to that effect. But secondly, remember, they have a very tight schedule. People who have objections, for example, must do so by the 4th of March. That has come and gone. Objections received on or before the 4th of March will be considered, investigated, and determined by the Commission by the 11th of March. Now, do they want to, mess with their own timetable, which has been very tight, and they've made that argument to many other parties that would have, for instance, when the parties said they were given very little time to do a lot of things, the Commission objected and said, we have been part of this journey, and we have very tight deadlines that we need to adhere to if we are to successfully manage this election. So both from an optics point of view, but also from a practical and time following their schedule, it'll be difficult, for them to want to. I can't see a reason that perhaps is the essence of my argument.
Voya, Dr. Ndou, I'm going to sketch a scenario for you of how things could play out. I'm going to ask you both your opinion, and Dr. Ndou, I'll come to you first. So, as I understand what will happen now, right, is we'll have, if you are correct, both of you, in fact, that there is no appeal from the Electoral Commission, and I'm sure that is probably what's going to happen, although I've been sure of lots of things and been wrong today. But if that's what happens, and former President Zuma then goes as the candidate for MK, they're obviously presumably getting enough votes for him to go to Parliament. At that point, he would go to the National Assembly and have to be sworn in as a Member of Parliament. And the person who would do the swearing in, the person who presides over that, is the Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, because all the MPs are sworn in by the Chief Justice before a Speaker is elected. If I've got my parliamentary procedure correct, feel free to correct me. Lots of people are going to correct me today on Twitter, but feel free to correct me if I get this wrong. So, Dr. Ndou, to you first. The Chief Justice Raymond Zondo will now have to swear in someone, and at that point, I would not be surprised if a member of the ANC or the DA or any of the other parties raises their hand and say, we still believe that Mr. Zuma is not eligible to be an MP. What does the Chief Justice do then?
Well, I think that is going to be a different ball game altogether. Remember, that will be the stage after the elections. And all those that are elected to be in the National Assembly are equal by status before elections are held. My view is that if we've passed this stage, that says that former President Jacob Zuma is eligible to stand as a candidate, and indeed, if he wins, he goes to Parliament. That is what we just have to follow. I think there should not be any mix of activities between the previous activities where former President Zuma was sent to jail and the activity in which he's sworn in, because those are two different activities and they happened at two different times. At this time, the issue of former President Zuma standing as a candidate is well clarified. He is like any other person who is contesting for elections, and of course, beyond elections, he should be treated as such. What could be the problem? Would be a situation in which there are people who feel that former President Zuma should not go to Parliament, and they don't raise their objections now, and they're allowed to raise such objections after the elections. I think that would not be quite unfair for former President Zuma and those who are doing that, because they will not have followed the processes to the book.
That's got to be a strong point, isn't it, Boyo?
My take is that the former president would laugh and the Chief Justice would recuse himself. I'm kidding. But that's what they've typically
Easily
done.
possible.
I mean, in cases involving the former president, the Chief Justice prefers to recuse himself, and the former president, but I was saying that, of course, with my tongue firmly in my cheek.
The current Deputy Chief Justice, soon to be the new Chief Justice, looking to take over.
But I mean, it would be of no real consequence in my view. It would be the same as the EFF standing up, registering a protest, saying, pay back the money, or in the case of the current president, you have a case to answer. But beyond that, I mean, legally, as Dr. Ndou is saying, I don't see anything, because the court has made a ruling. You have to go back to court to undo what today's court decision.
Dr. Levy Ndou, political analyst at Tshwane University of Technology. More from you, I'm sure, over the next couple of days on this. Thank you very much indeed, our associate political editor. Well, there's going to be a lot more to come, a lot more reaction. Colleen Gumby, I understand you to speak to various of the parties involved in all of this. We will focus on the issue of jobs and youth unemployment.